Liverpool get the win against Arsenal, but more importantly, we see yet more of slot ball and what to expect during his time at Liverpool as head coach, not necessarily manager. And those two things should definitely be separated in this new Liverpool hierarchy. Welcome back to Laurence McKenna on LFC channel. Let's talk about the friendly between Liverpool and the Gunners, which happened in Philadelphia just the other night. And you know what? Like every game now, I get this really excited feeling because obviously, during the Klopp era, I was so excited to go to every match. And I worried that when that ended, we would not get this excited feeling. But with the foundation that Klopp laid, with the squad that he built, which I still think is clearly a very strong squad, though we can talk about some of the signings that Liverpool need to make, there was such technical proficiency, there was such high levels of fitness, there were such levels of understanding that he brought the team to, but also such a different mentality to what Slot has now. I think Klopp was, when he first came into the club, he said this one thing, he said, we play with our gut, and or at least he said stomach, but what he meant was gut. We play from here, and this is important to the heart. What he meant by that was these things are pre-programmed. Slot seems to be slightly more freeform, though there is a lot of shape to his team, and slightly more, let's see how we break down this opposition. Let's see what it is that we actually are trying to achieve with the ball, rather than this repeatable Klopp system, which I also think was a Pep Linders system. And the players seem to be released a little bit from what they previously had. Not that I think they hated Klopp. We saw the Curtis Jones comments on Redmen TV, where Curtis was saying, of course I'd never say anything bad about Jurgen Klopp. Of course, I was just speaking about the difference and the difference in the feeling. And again, a change is as good as a rest. And Curtis is certainly enjoying that. And we certainly saw a promising midfield for Liverpool, which didn't have a defensive midfielder in it, or at least not someone who was a recognisable defensive midfielder. Curtis Jones played a little bit deeper, a bit more all over the place. Szoboszlai a bit further down the field. Harvey Elliott like that, definitely playing as a 10, facilitator type, but also still has that busyness that he always had in the Klopp era. And I think that midfield, the fact that Liverpool weren't playing a double pivot in the same way as they were playing in the previous game, but the principles still applied, is so important to watching Slot in this era. We could have identified Klopp profiles in the previous era, and we're beginning to identify different profiles of player now in the Slot era. It's really great to see classic Salah back, Salah playing off the shoulder of the last man, but also dropping a little bit deeper, facilitating the Harvey Elliott's, the Szoboszlai of the team, and trying to get some interplay, but also just stretching Arsenal out, stretching his legs, cutting across players, being brave, being audacious. For people, and I think there are a lot of people out there who said, hey, I think at some point Salah's going to leave. I was one of those people who definitely thought at some point he probably would look to be leaving Liverpool. He looks really sharp. He looks really like he wants to be involved with this team. He looks really like he's one of the leaders. And I think the difference between the Klopp era and this, he doesn't have the same preconceptions. He can change his role within the side now. He can take a lot of the classic Salah traits that we saw that definitely came out under the Klopp era and evolve those under a coach like Slot. Not that he wouldn't have done that under Klopp. I think his role was evolving anyway, but it's great to see some of these classic elements of him mixed with the confidence he's come back with. And as much as obviously we'd love to see Liverpool get some transfer business done, I think it is going to be in for out, or out for in, should we say. And Liverpool needs sell to buy in this regime. It could be PSR. I'm wondering if it's closer to PSR than it is like the idea of, hey, we're not going to spend any money unless we get some money in. Everyone's saying that FSG and those guys made huge amounts of profit. I think there's a lot that I'd really love to know how the club is run, what the financial model is going to be, what they anticipate coming from the Premier League. I think a lot of people were blindsided by a lot of the financial models. I'd love to know what you guys think about that. And a lot of people didn't know that there was going to be difficulty coming. They didn't know that they would be charged. They thought maybe they were slightly above the rules. I'm going to be interested to see how the Premier League deals with that. And if Liverpool have remained on the right side, whilst other teams have not, maybe some of the criticism might be tapered because people are going to go, we didn't know as fans, obviously, that these financial rules were going to affect people in such a drastic way and mean, people dock points and those kind of things. So I'd really love to know what you guys think about that. Overall, I think in the first half, you probably would have said that it was getting closer to a starting Liverpool lineup. In the back line, probably none of them will be starting, apart from maybe Conor Bradley and maybe Joel Quansah. But outside of that, I think it was, still the principles are there. We still see a slightly more deep left-sided centre-back. We see a slightly more progressed right-sided centre-back. We see the fullbacks pushing on just a little bit more, a slightly rotated back line. 𝐋𝐢𝐯𝐞𝐫𝐩𝐨𝐥 is slightly more defensive and is definitely filling in a lot more for that the left-hand side, where someone like Fabio Carvalho is then just given the license just roam forward and do whatever he needs to do to facilitate Jota and Salah just ahead of them. What we are finding is these wide forwards are very much like a big weapon for someone like Slot. And when obviously in pre-season it's going to be such a different way to the way that they're going to play in the actual season. I think a lot more teams are going to sit deep against Liverpool. I think a lot more teams are going to try and counter-attack against Liverpool. Arsenal and Betis, and when we come to Manchester United, are going to play a very different style of football to probably what we'll end up coming up against. So this isn't really an indicator of how strong we'll be, how dominant we're going to be, but I think it is an indicator of what we're trying to do. Dominate possession, which Liverpool did just about in the first half, though it was really quite equal, 52-48. Liverpool definitely dominated those chances, but certainly dominated in terms of getting the ball down the other end of the field and finishing it. You see the chance for Salah, you see the brilliant chance created by Harvey Elliott for Fabio Carvalho. Those two have got a great understanding. Friendship off the field equals friendship on the field. And I certainly think that when we're looking at the finishes that Liverpool have, we're not a million miles away from some classic like Liverpool ball, really. And it's not me saying we've just ripped off what Klopp has. I think it is more, we actually just have players who are capable of playing freely, playing in a way which feels a little bit more like, hey, we're back to what we were before, which is a little bit more free, a little bit more instinctive, a little bit more, let's just keep it simple. And I think that was a lot more something we enjoyed when Klopp first came in. It became a lot more complex the more that Klopp and Pep just kind of tinkered with the team. And I get the feeling that the team were bought into the project, but maybe were slightly overthinking things, weren't quite sure what it was that their role was. At times had slightly too complexer instructions. And we're seeing now when players have played in slightly more, it's not simple positions, but are given different kinds of instructions, have refreshed a little bit, it's getting a little bit more what we want to see. It's a bit more Liverpool almost. I just want to talk a little bit about the fact that Arsenal was still kind of scything through that Liverpool midfield. Obviously, Liverpool didn't really play a recognised central defensive midfielder. It was interesting, by the way, that Liverpool didn't actually end up with a recognised central defensive midfielder, apart from Endo in the second half. And then Arsenal did dominate a lot more. I think this was much more about fitness and system than overall domination of the game. Though, I think you'd still say we see Liverpool trying to dominate the possession, dominate what it is that Arsenal are trying to do, and not necessarily be the reactive team, the instinctive, we're just going to repeat this high press thing, a very reductive version of what Klopp did. We've moved away from that a little bit, and I think there is something very positive about that. You can also say Liverpool didn't dominate the second half because both teams completely changed their formation, changed their players, and Liverpool played a much younger side with a couple of experienced players in there. Still enjoyed a lot of watching the youngsters. I enjoyed out in the second half watching Nyoni, Nalo's certainly an interesting player. I think we've got a lot of young centre-back prospects, which is probably why we are trying to look at moving on Joe Gomez, or possibly looking at moving in on Sepp van den Berg as well. I think if you're going to look to move on anyone because of the youth we've got coming through at the back, and I'm not saying you rely on them for the whole season, but there's certainly elements of coaching that we need to do, and I think we've not got a manager who's definitely going to coach a lot of these guys up. Jarell Quansah coming through, him alongside Van Dijk, him with Konaté. Konaté's injury record, obviously, I'd love to see improve, but you get my point. There's a lot of coaching here for Slot to do, and he's certainly trying to coach the system into these players rather than it be like, I've got these fixed positions, you're going to play this specific role, can you fit into that? If not, then you're not going to play. The system is certainly a more enticing one for me than just what we thought it was going to be. I think a lot of people thought it was going to be possession for possession's sake. A lot of people were a little bit worried that it could look a bit closer to a Maresca model. And actually, since he's come in, we've seen there's a lot more interesting possession, a lot more playing through that double pivot, playing through the midfield, trying to actually have some interplay. There's a lot more bounce passes in there. It's quite interesting to watch. It's engaging as a fan to actually watch and, support, should we say. Still enjoying watching Fabio Carvalho on that left-hand side. The fact that Liverpool haven't really had anyone come back on that left-hand side, and the fact that we were speaking about maybe Gordon coming in, The fact that we were speaking about maybe Luis Diaz leaving, where would 𝐀𝐫𝐬𝐈 then play? He's playing great off the left for the Netherlands. Will that continue for him, or will he be seen as more of a striker profile at Liverpool? Would that mean that Núñez plays more on the left and he plays more through the centre? Honestly, it feels very adaptable. And actually, I really feel like 𝐀𝐫𝐈 might suit this Liverpool team because of where we see that front line, the average positions being and where they're playing. I think we're going to see them a lot deeper. I think we're going to see them facilitating Salah, Jota, possibly even Núñez from coming out wide, and push them through the middle. I'm going to be interested, do you know what I'm saying? To see how those movement pieces, where they move from, whether they move from outside to in, inside to out, who's underlapping, who's overlapping. That's going to be really interesting. It's certainly satisfying to beat any other side. I'm not going to put too much weight on it. I think Arsenal missed a couple of big chances. Liverpool created more big chances as well. Probably should have put a few more of those big chances away. Probably should have made it more difficult for Arsenal overall than they did. I think Arsenal probably won the midfield battle, but Odegaard, Partey and Havertz, that's a pretty impressive midfield. They also played Gabriel Martinelli, they also played Reece Nelson, they also played Gabriel Jesus through the middle. So there's a lot more experience in there, and I definitely think their back line was a lot more experienced. What is great about Liverpool now is watching the unpredictability of everything that's going on there. People don't just look at it and go, hey, that's Jurgen Klopp, I'm going to beat him in this way. Then I go, okay, how can we counter what Arne Slot is doing? And imagine there are a lot of people watching this and going, okay, I can see, especially higher managers looking at this and going, okay, I can see what it is that Slot's trying to achieve. Let's try this to counteract that. I think early on in the season, especially against teams like Ipswich, we're going to see a lot of let's try and counteract what Liverpool are doing. And I'll be interested to see whether Liverpool have got the coaching into them to get beyond those points and get to a point where you do kind of go, oh, these guys understand the system, rather than it being the other way around and we don't quite understand that system, they're able to block us and we're frustrated early on. I think getting a good start in could be the difference between feeling as if we're challenging and going into the middle of top four. I'm not 100% sure this team is ready to challenge yet, though they do look like they really love the principles. People still talk about how much they love the training and all those kind of things. Maybe that freshness, that newness could push us a bit further. But I think with the Champions League, with the fact we finished third last season, with the fact that we haven't made any signings in the off-season, we will integrate some youth, though a lot of those guys will end up loaned out because they're not going to get those starting minutes. It's going to be really interesting to see what it is that we end up doing form-wise, what it is that we end up doing in terms of can we actually mount a title charge. Personally, I think we're just probably a season, maybe a season and a half away from that, but I might be wrong. And who knows, come the start of the season, my prediction might actually be Liverpool title charge. It was good to see the young players come back. It's great to see Bajcetic, obviously pretty low involvement in the game. Same for Nyoni, the same for, I can't say that I thought Tyler Morton was like the most influential player in the game. I think actually Arsenal played us off the field in the second half, but still good to see those players trying to implement a lot of what Slot is doing. And fascinatingly, the difference in shape between the sides in the two halves. Much deeper line in the second half, much more almost like a 4-4-2, probably more like a 4-2-1-1, a 4-4-1-1. And seeing Liverpool change up their system, seeing Liverpool trying to play different shapes, but still maintain their principles is really important to me. And I really enjoyed watching it. Again, pre-season, don't play too much into it, but let me know what you guys thought in the comments below, and I'll see you guys in another one. Much love. Bye.